Hello, welcome. My name is Carranza and I am going to talk about emotion and second language learning in this video. And to do that, I will resort to different fields such as neuroscience, psychology, learning methodology, etc. I would like to start with a sentence that I will repeat at the end of this presentation, and I hope that by then you will agree with me. Let me convince you. Okay, here we go. Emotional learning contributes to the personal well-being and social success of the individual throughout our lives. Okay, so we continue. Emotion is crucial for learning and education, but they are not the same thing. Education refers to formal instruction. It is a social construct, whereas learning is a cognitive process that normally has an influence on our behavior. Education conveys learning, but not all the way around. For instance, babies learn all the time, and they are not instructed. They even learn how to speak a language. However, when we learn a second language, it is different because we do it within an academic environment. And let's start with the human brain. Why? Because this is the site of emotion and also learning. How is it? How does it work? Okay, so the brain is structured in different layers. The oldest one is placed at in the lowest position, and it controls bodily functions. It is the reptile in us. We share it with all the animals on Earth. The second layer is the limbic system, which is the emotional brain. We share it with mammals. And here we make the value judgments which influence our behavior. It controls emotion, but at a very basic level, normally linking an emotion with an action or with an event. And finally, the last layer, the most evolved one, is the neocortex. That is what makes us human. Only us have it. Okay? And here is where language, learning, memory, reasoning occurs. Interesting enough, they are all interconnected. That is, emotional and cognitive processes do not operate separately. That is why emotion is so important in learning and education. How? Okay, positive emotions reinforce memory and learning, but negative emotions have a very negative impact because stress, for instance, blocks the flow of information from the hippocampus to the prefrontal cortex, which is active memory and learning is. This is why we literally cannot think when we are stressed, because all the information is stored in the basement. It cannot go up to the penthouse, okay, which is where cognitive processes, learning, logical thinking occurs. So what happens when the limbic system cooperates? Well, magic, okay? When it cooperates, it's fantastic, and a state of mind occurs, which Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, he defines this state as the flow. It is a state of mind when we are 100% in the moment. We have all experienced it. For instance, when you are trying to solve a very challenging problem, okay, it is a state when you are completely focused and concentrated in what you are doing. Everything else seems not to be, you seem to be alone. People talk to you and you don't even notice, okay? It is a very satisfying action, and we are 100% concentrated on it, okay? So, and this is the perfect state for learning. And there are some educational institutions which incorporate the flow in their curriculum. For instance, the Key Learning Community in Indianapolis applies this. They have the flow room where students go at least 1 hour a week, And there they engage in activities that they like or explore new fields and do things they like and explore new things in order to achieve this state. Teachers also take it into account, and no matter what subject they teach, they do it in ways in an attempt to foster the state of mind, the flow in their students. Well, but there are more ingredients that facilitate learning, not only flow. There are other things that we all can do as teachers. Well, I say we because I include myself and probably some of you who are also teachers. But if you are not a teacher, please don't feel excluded. You are a learner, okay? And we have all had teachers, so we know what a good teacher and a bad teacher is. We know the difference very well. And one of the main important factors in the classroom is self-confidence. And what is self-confidence? It is the positive perception that we have about our own ability to solve some task. And the way to achieve it, for instance, is to focus on strengths rather than on weaknesses. Like errors can be viewed as an opportunity to learn rather than as a personal failure. The comments of the teachers are very important in this sense. Criticism is really negative in learning. Okay? Also, tasks should be challenging, but in a moderate way. If they are too easy, students will get bored and will lose attention. And if they are too difficult, they will be frustrated. As Csikszentmihalyi puts it, enjoyment appears at the boundary between boredom and anxiety, when the challenges are just balanced with the person's capacity to act. So, teachers should keep everybody interested, okay, in whatever they are doing. But this is not easy because we are all different. Intelligence is not a single and unique capacity. Traditional intelligence tests concentrate on our ability to solve linguistic or mathematical problems, but Howard Gardner challenged this vision of intelligence in his work, Multiple Intelligences. He considers the cognitive capacity, okay, as a group of skills or abilities that he calls intelligences. He describes up to 8. We all have it, all of them, but in different levels, in different capacities. For instance, there is, of course, the mathematical intelligence, the linguistic intelligence, but also the musical intelligence, naturalistic intelligence, kinesthetic or bodily intelligence. For instance, dancers and actors have this ability very developed because they can express themselves through their bodies. And there is also the intrapersonal intelligence, interpersonal intelligence, visual, spatial, etc. So we all have different profiles. We are better in some intelligences and worse in others. So teachers should have this in mind because we all have different ways in which we learn. There are different learning styles. For instance, I am a visual learner. I remember writing an exam and remembering exactly where the information was, the page, the layout. If somebody is talking to me about a passage in a book or whatever, I say, okay, in which page is it? So I go to the page, I read it, and it's okay, then I understand it. However, there are other people who prefer to be told, okay? And there are people who need to move to think. Okay, so we all learn in many different ways. So teachers should design activities that take all this into account. So a great variety of activities, so everybody in the classroom is engaged at least at some point in the classroom. And as I say, it is not easy because sometimes we have many students and it's difficult to attend to the individuality of all our students, but well, as teachers, we have to do it. Okay? And it goes without saying that a good atmosphere in class is crucial, okay? Because it has been, in a research, it was demonstrated that students perform better when they are happy, they feel safe, and they are motivated. And empathy is important on the side of the students, but also on the side of the teacher. Being aware of the emotions, how the other person feels, is important in the classroom. because Goldman described another type of intelligence, which is emotional intelligence. And it is formed by different capacities, like awareness of your own feelings, your own emotions, the ability to manage them, also to overcome frustration and motivate yourself, and empathy, being aware of the emotion of others and being able to work in groups. And this is very important because this is what makes the difference between a champion, for example, and someone who is not a champion. Because apart from whatever quality that person has that makes him better, that person also must have the capacity to motivate himself. Because it is not easy. I mean, marathon runners, of course, they are exhausted. They want to stop. They want to abandon the race many times. But they have this ability to motivate themselves and keep on going, keep moving. This is emotional intelligence, okay? And this is why it is so important, because it is the difference between success or failure in many aspects of our lives. Okay, so everything I have said so far applies to learning in general and, of course, to second language learning, which is what I'm going to concentrate on right now. Okay, and this is a field where emotion is especially important. Okay, so important that it has even reached, okay, an institutional level through a number of research by the Council of Europe, okay, resulting in the Common European Framework of Reference for Languages. This is a framework, as you can see in its name. It is a framework for languages. It establishes some standards in language learning and in assessment. It defines different levels, okay, from the elementary, which is A1, the basic, A2, etc., etc. It defines the contents and what each level means, really, what it means to be an A1 level, what you can do as a student or as a speaker of that language at that level. And it also maintains that in order to communicate, we need to control a number of competences. We need to have them, and one of them is the existential competence. It includes attitudes, motivations, values, beliefs, cognitive styles, and personality factors. I include here a quotation, okay, from this document that states, important ethical and pedagogic issues are raised, such as which personality factor facilitate or impede foreign or second language learning and acquisition, on how learners can be helped to exploit strengths and overcome weaknesses. Okay, so at a theoretical level, this is a huge step because emotion is reframed. Okay, they contemplate the importance of emotion. At a practical level, okay, we're not there yet. We are getting better because they don't say exactly what we should do about it. Okay, they recognize the existence, the importance of emotions, but they don't say what we need to do about it. So it's up to the teachers and to the educational institutions to decide what to do with them. And this topic is so important that there is more research, thanks goodness. Okay, as back as 1980, okay, Stebik maintained that success in language learning depends on what happens inside and among the people in the classroom, rather than on techniques and didactic materials. Professor Jane Arnold interprets this quote in the following way. She maintains that inside means anxiety, self-confidence, and among refers to the group dynamics of the classroom. This teacher worked, this professor had a project, okay, related to emotions, in which she concluded that attention to the emotional aspect of learning is very beneficial. She is a professor at the University of Sevilla, where I was a student and later on a teacher. And I was a student when she carried out this research. Unfortunately, I wasn't in her group, so I cannot tell you about it from a first-person perspective. But rumor says that students had a great time. And so do evidence, because students in their groups obtained academic results which were above the average, and they were very happy and considered this experience very positive. Okay, so positive emotions are crucial, and not only because you will feel better, but also because it has an influence on the willingness to communicate. We have to remember that in order to learn how to speak a language, we have to speak it. We have to communicate in that language. We need practice. So production is important for accuracy and for fluency. And if there is no willingness to communicate, this cannot be improved. Okay? And teachers should foster a good atmosphere, a safe space for the students, okay, where they feel comfortable communicating. And they should also counteract negative emotions, okay, because there are certain anxieties and problems which are typical of a classroom. Apart from the anxiety you have in your daily life, when you go to school, you also have a specific type of anxiety related to the academic results, the topic that you are working. You may feel comfortable or not with it. You might like the subject. You may not like it. You may have problems with your classmates. So there are anxieties which are specific for the classroom. And in the case of the second language classroom, there is one more type of anxiety, because you have to communicate with an unstable linguistic vehicle. And that makes you feel very vulnerable, because you want to communicate mature ideas with an immature linguistic vehicle. My students in the elementary level, A1 level, they get very frustrated. They say, okay, how do you say this? Oh, sorry, I can't tell you how to say that, but at this level you cannot communicate that. Because you might be a very witty person, very funny, very eloquent in your maternal language, but then in a second language you have a reduced personality. When you are in an elementary level, you are a baby. You only have very few tools in order to communicate, and it's one of the most difficult things is to accept that and to feel comfortable with it. So I always tell my students, okay, don't worry, you are a baby again. Isn't it exciting? You are learning something new every day. Right now, you can express something that 1 hour ago you were not able to do. So stop, smell the roses, and forget about all the things you cannot say, because you grow up as an individual as well as you learn a language and you gain new tools. Well, and here we go. We are at the end of the presentation. Okay, so education is something more than memorizing data. Okay, I think you agree with that. And it should be a learning process that continues throughout our lives. And this is the sentence again. Emotional education contributes to the personal well-being and social success of the individual. Well, I hope you have learned a lot, and most of all, I hope you have enjoyed the presentation. Bye.